Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, and today we'll be having a look at the premiers, the reigning premiers, and they have been for some time now, the Hawthorn Football Club. We're going to have a bit of a preview of their SuperCoach list for 2016, and as you can imagine, there's plenty of gun players on their list, but if you've heard a few of my previews already, we're looking at mainly the players who offer a bit of value and potentially might be able to explode into the elite category. Obviously the Hawks already have quite a few players in the elite category, so we're not going to touch on your Mitchells, your Lewis, Hodge, Roughhead, etc., because we know exactly what they're going to produce, and while they may drop off slightly with age, they may again continue to get better, which they have been doing for some time. We're not going to look into them too deeply. We're going to have a look at a few players, a couple of halfback flankers, and a couple of younger guys that are probably underpriced, mainly due to opportunity. And I think the Hawks are aging. Yes, they're unbelievably good, but age catches up to everybody, and there is a chance that a spot or two might open up in the midfield. I'll take a look at a couple of guys that might be able to fit that mould. But first off the rank, Grant Birchall. He's a pinnacle of consistency, Grant. He just averages solid points year in, year out. Since 2011, where he averaged the 94 points, he's gone 94.6, 92.1, 88.9, and he actually went not that great last year with 86.1, continuing that downhill trend. He had a slightly poorer year. Why was that the case? I'm not really sure, just slightly down year. I think there was no real indicator. He averaged a very low 4.2 contested possession, so he really didn't win as much of the ball as he has at times, even though he's never been a big in and under winner, and he had slightly more clangers than usual, and I guess that may account for that 3 or 4 points per game. But look, as I mentioned, his consistency is exactly what you want from him. If you're looking for a guy that can give you that 85 points to 105 points most weeks, Birchall is your man. He isn't probably a guy that's going to be like Heath Shaw or a Hodge last year in our backline that can just dominate games and score big hundreds, but he is consistent and he is reliable. I mean, take a look at these numbers. Since that 2011 mark to last year, average touches have always been between 22.8 and 23.8. Tackles 1.3 to 1.6, contested ball 4.2 to 6.8, his uncontested ball 16.4 to 17.6, and the clangers 1.3 to 1.8. So his range over 5 years I should say, has been unbelievably consistent really. He's 28 years of age, so he's not that old yet, and look, I think if he's a guy that you really think can still continue about that 90 rate and have a better year, he's slightly underpriced for what he can produce, because I think if he has a good year, he certainly could average 95. So he's a good kick. The Hawks like it in his hands, so I think if you want a reliable guy, you really can't look past him. Next up is Taylor Duray, and he's an interesting prospect, I think. He's sort of been just averaging moderate numbers, 17.8 touches last year, 2.1 tackles, 7 marks a game is impressive, and he averaged around that, I think it was 78 mark for the SuperCoach points, but in the finals he averaged 99.7, 25 touches, the 9 marks. He was sub first game, so we're obviously not going to take that into account, but those last 3 finals he dominated with basically 100 SuperCoach point average, and that's what took my fancy, because I've seen him play throughout and he is a beautiful kick. I reckon he's just about one of their best kicks in their team, and the fact that Suckling is gone, and while Suckling didn't dominate last year, he's still another guy that they look to use off the half-back line. He averaged around the 75-80 points, found 20 touches a game, so that's all opportunity that could be coming Duray's way. He's had those more lockdown roles at times, but I think if they're looking for another rebounder along with Birchall, giving it to a more youthful player, Duray could be the man. As I say, he doesn't win a great amount of pill on his own. He relies on receiving it and the handballs, etc. But he's a very good kick, and I think that's a great thing in SuperCoach, because we know what effective kicks do for the scoring. I think he's a man, if he can up his touches per game, he is a guy that I think could potentially average around that 90 down the track. You'd be a pretty game man to pick him this year, I think. You'd be pretty brave, but I think he offers a bit of value, and I think down the track he might be a guy we'd look at. I touched on the fact that the likes of Mitchell and Hodge are going to be, getting that little bit year older and potentially not playing as good as they always have, which they'll still be an elite level, but there may be that slight drop-off, and there may be a choice by the coaches to progress some of the younger talent as well, just naturally, a bit like the Cats have done, just that transitioning while he's still at the top of the ladder. And a man who I think could be a beneficiary of that is Jonathan O'Rourke. The number 2 pick in 2012, of course, went to the Giants, now finds himself at the Hawks, and it was always going to be the case, really. He was starved of opportunity last year. He had chances at times. It never really got happening for him. It just didn't quite happen for him on the field, but played the 2 games, scored 45 and 77 for an average of 61. He'll be priced around that 230,000 mark. He is just a pure midfielder, so that's a bit disappointing, but expected. But in his draft year, the real things that stood out were the endurance. He's got silky skills, the ability to be in the contest and win the hard ball, but also break away from it. It's a rare trait, but he can do both, and he is quite a nice kick. He's a real silky player, and that comes as no surprise when he's such a high pick back in his under 18 level. So he's a player that I think if he can get opportunity and find a spot in that Hawthorn midfield, he could be extremely impressive, because he's not going to cop a tag. He's going to have a free run of it, and he's got class to burn. I mean, he'll be nearly 22 now, so it's not like you're taking the risk on a young player. Yes, he's inexperienced as far as AFL is concerned, but he's been doing a pretty hefty apprenticeship. I think he's struggled with injury in the past, but the apprenticeship is there, and he could be a player who's ready to explode and really have a good, breakout season for the Hawks. So I think O'Rourke is one to look at, no doubt. For the value point of view, Brendan Whitecross has been on our radars at times. Played the 4 games last year, 36.8, so he's going to be cheap. But my question on him is he even in their best 22? It's been some time now since he's played consistent footy, and even when he did, he's only a guy who's averaging probably around that 80 to 85 mark. So you'd only be looking for him to make you a bit of cash, and he's fairly cheap. He's probably not cheap enough for the risk that's involved. I doubt that he's in their real best 22 at the moment. He's certainly going to have to work for it pretty hard, because it's a competitive field down at the Hawks. But he's one to keep an eye on, I feel. Taya Miles as well. I don't know a great deal about him. I've seen his highlights and things like that, but he's always just stood out to me as a guy that I feel could step up, and he's got a bit of talent. I think he's a player without a whole heap of evidence. I like to throw out a few numbers and things, but Miles is more of a gut feel. I think he's a player that could get opportunity and be, a beneficiary of perhaps an ageing list and some players maybe playing different positions and the midfield times changing up, etc. On the midfield times, I've always liked Luke Bruce as well. He's shown that he can score points as a forward, but I do think he's the sort of player that will eventually find himself in the midfield. And if that opportunity comes this year, well, look out. I think he averaged about 82. He may not really find that opportunity yet, because look, the thing with the Hawks, you look through and what makes them so good, I suppose, they're so even and so many winners across every line, and they can play so many different roles. So I do think, though, at one point in his career, Bruce will become a midfielder, and when he does, he's a very good player in traffic, and he's got silky skills, and he's pretty classy. So he'll be one down the track, I think, and you might be tempted in a draft league to pick him as a forward as well. But Rioli, I should say, I was about to finish up, but Rioli's one man I was just going to touch on. Again, I've always had that feeling, and I'm sure everyone does, that one year Rioli's just going to come out and absolutely dominate and average 105 to 110. Good luck trying to guess that year, mind you. I mean, I've tried in the past, because he's had stints in the midfield as well where he's just been electric, but he's really found his role across the half-forward line and being that small crumbing player, and he's just so creative. Dominated in the final series, as we know. Averaged 92.8 last year. Always been a question on his body. He seemed to get that right last year, but look, if you've got some faith in Rioli and want a bit of a point of difference player, because most people have blacklisted him, really. I mean, I don't think many people would have the guts to pick Rioli, because he can be slightly inconsistent at times, has his big games, has his down games. But I suppose the injuries is what those hamstrings has really scared us off at times. So, but I've always had the feeling that Rioli, we all know the talent he has, and I think if he strings it all together, which one year he will, like to the elite extent, he'll average 3 figures and he'll do it very well. So, another man to keep your eye on potentially if his body is holding up. But that's a bit of a wrap-up for the Hawks. As I said, we're not touching on their absolute guns, which makes up a fair stint of their list. We're just looking at a few players that could be given more opportunity, because I think it will come as the Hawks even ever so slightly transition, and you never know what can come with injuries. So a few players to keep on your radar. That's enough of me talking anyway. If you feel like you've got any comments on that video, any players I may have missed, or if I should have said someone that you've had in mind for some time, definitely let me know. Give the video a like as well, and give the channel a subscribe. That's always helpful, because I'll have plenty of SuperCoach content coming your way. I've got every club in store over probably the next week or so. I'll be looking. We're about halfway through now, so plenty of SuperCoach content coming your way for 2016. So hit that subscribe button. Thanks, guys.